start with a round of thanks to everyone. Right into it. So, I'm going to be going over the voters today of why you should be voting for us. The first voter is, of course, the feminist critique that my partner gave on the idea that feminicide is worse than any other form of genocide. The government team is putting the weight of death based on gender. They're weighing death based on the gender of who is dying. This is unacceptable, and we feel the alternative to this is that they should be weighing all deaths as equal, and not by weighing one person's death as to another's, but only by their gender. We feel that you should vote on this because it will send a message that it is not okay to merely to be sexist in a sense, to be reverse sexist in the ways of to be reverse sexist and to favor one sex over the other. Our second reason that you should vote in the negative is because the government's plan has no solvency. The president of Israel has said they will not accept conditional aid after these 8 years that they have been receiving unconditional aid. Israel has gained much territory in these past 8 years, and they've been producing settlements on the West Bank for many years now. And if they stop, then they will, of course, be seen as vulnerable, and they will be able to be attacked. And because they will not, they will refuse to accept it. And the government team doesn't do an adequate job of showing why they will accept the conditional aid. Israel will lose its military support of the greatest military power in the world. These countries who currently want to see Israel wiped off the face of the earth will strike, and they will wipe Israel off the map if we cease to give conditional aid. And if we give military aid afterwards, then that just creates many more problems. Israel will be alone if we force this. If they will be isolated, and they will be struck down. So because of this disadvantage, and because their plan lacks solvency, that's why you should vote in the negative. And so, because just the voters, because they can't see out solvency, there will be no solvency. The president won't accept it, and there will be nuclear war, disadvantage, and no solvency. And finally, the critique on reverse feminism. Please vote in the negative.
Thank you for everybody. Let's just jump right on case. Right off the bat, I'd like to address this case that is brought up by first apologizing for the opposition team if they were indeed offended by the use of the word under question, and to any members of either the speakers of the House or the members of Parliament if they were also offended by with this term that's under question femicide. It is by no means how they say that we're weighing death based on gender. It's just a simple, it's a connotative word of what can happen and what has happened in the past. The fact that women are targeted according to their gender. It is a terrible thing, but the fact is that it is something that happened, and it's impossible for us. They offer me no counter definition or no other possible way to discuss this when saying this is entirely bad and we can't talk about this at all. So I do apologize if they're offended for it, and we can easily talk about genocide also, but I feel that doesn't accurately depict or show the weight of everything that we are facing. If anything, I would like to turn this, they like to say that this is a voter, if anything, I like to turn this into a reverse voter due to the fact that they brought this up in their member speech when I first used this term in my Prime Minister constructed. So they are purposely now bringing it up as a member speech when it's the first chance I've had to bring this up, and it's taken up a whole minute of my rebuttal time. That's the first reason. Now let's go on to just the case and why you be voting go. Here's the status quo, and the status quo which the government, which the opposition is trying to get you to vote on. As we point out in my farms and in my background, Hamas does have this majority population. Hamas will be winning those elections, will then increase the tax revenue and the violence against Israel. This will decrease Saudi Arabia's and Egypt's pursuit for peace, because Israel will then continue to fight, because there's no incentive for Israel to get out of the Gaza Strip. So this violence continues to increase, and people continue to develop these nuclear weapons, which we also painted out, which will then ultimately lead to a regional war as these people are fighting, which will drag the U.S. and Russia and Iran in and lead to a World War III. That is the status quo that the opposition is trying to fight for. That is the status quo that they're trying to say. Their arguments against our advantages is that they say that they have no solvency. Well, as my good partner very clearly outlined, Israel might say a lot of big things, but they don't have a choice. The opposition says, oh, they're just not going to do it, and they're going to get wiped off the map. Well, if they can say that so easily, that yes, they're going to get wiped off the map, I'm sure that Israel knows that as well, and understands that without $50 billion a year of support, they don't have a choice but to pull back out of the Gaza Strip. We're not out of the West Bank. We're not talking about pulling out all aid and just saying goodbye and turning our backs on Israel. We're saying this is what you need to do. You need to do this so that we can prevent war and can access all these advantages, because the alternative, the status quo, is only going to lead to a world war and is only going to lead to this further violence, which is not going to end well for any of us. They say that we're fiating that that Israel will take this. Well, no, we're not fiating that, because we can easily see, as they even point out themselves, that the fact that Israel has these amount of enemies and they can't risk to lose us as an ally, that they don't have a choice but to do this. This then, therefore, you can see this solves the solvency argument for both the first advantage and the second advantage. But just to blow these up, the very first advantage, that this will lead to Israeli West Bank peace, and you can cross-apply all of our arguments that they've made, because their only argument that Israel won't accept this peace, and as my partner clearly is going to say to you, A, they will accept this peace, and B, let's even just grant it to them for a second that might be a chance. The chance of winning this peace is better than the war that the status quo will lead us to. Any chance of keeping Hamas out of power, or keeping Israel from attacking, or keeping Palestine or Iran from attacking Israel, will definitely help. Moving on to our second advantage, the Israeli hegemony. This is only a step 2 piece. I don't know how they say, hey, this has no solvency. Well, we just showed you that this has no solvency, or that this has solvency. So when you take out that argument, you can flow over everything else, because they didn't touch on anything else at all. They simply stuck to their solvency argument, which, as I just showed you, is debunked. And you can see that by the combined efforts of both Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Israel, that they can increase their soft power, increase that pressure on Iran, which is going to be decreasing the hostilities, because usually people attack as A, Iran has a whole bunch of friends that say, hey, let's go for it, no big deal, and B, Israel feels absolutely trapped, so they fight back. The big picture is we're preventing war, we're stopping this violence, we're trying to pull this out, while they only support a status quo which has no good way to end. Quickly touching on case, their off-case, their disadvantages are just, again, their political process, and that this is going to lead to nuclear war. I'll first address their second disadvantage, that, as my partner said, this is non-unique. If anything, the status quo will lead to nuclear war. You can cross-apply all my arguments over there from the advantages. Now, on their first disadvantage, the political process, they say that we're going to be viewed as fair weather friends. Even if we were going to grant that, which my partner said that it isn't true at all, that is still better than the chance of Israel going to war. For this reason, you should be voting go. Thank you.